The Ridgeway Council one will be of great interest to our residents. Anyway, apologies, please, Sadie.
Got apologies from councillors Ian Cottingham and Patrick Clark, and from councillors Richard Sumner and Joe Stewart.
Very grateful for that. Thank you. Any declarations of interest have we had, or any declarable in the room, please? None. Thank you. So the first one up is, I say more mundane, but anyway, it's an urgent item, given that we do need to consider, both in part 1 and part 2, a voluntary ex-ante transparency notice, which we all know is a VEET, for our finance system. I'm going to propose this, but I'm going to ask Shannon to perhaps just give us a little bit of background. The essence of this is, and Shannon, you'll tell us why it's urgent, please, but our Unit 4, who provide the software, will not be supporting our current release after a given date, and they want to go to a software as a service option, SaaS, and we look to follow that path in that upgrade. Shannon, that's a clumsy way of introducing it, but could you give us a bit of meat on the bone, please?
Yes. Essentially, we were served notice on our existing provision, the contract that terminates on the 31st of March this financial year. We investigated various different options, and a direct award to Unit 4 has been the preferred approach. It is a new supported option for us from the 1st of April. It is 22k more expensive than our current arrangements, which would become unsupported as at the 1st of April. We have decided this is a more value for money offering than actually going out to tender and implementing a full new finance system.
So that gives the background to why we are fast tracking this. The award we'll discuss in part 2. I think you're seconding for me, Councillor Gaines, and thank you for
stepping up. I am indeed, Leader.
So to do and reserve your right. Any comments from the executive side on this? It is a important aspect. Councillor Paul, you know that we're not going to move into an unsupported state on a vital project, a piece of software like this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leader. No, you're absolutely right, and I would very much support the council doing this direct award. From a transformation perspective, we need to make sure that the data is held in its integrant. So as we continue on with our transformation programme, we are supported, and we have that full support as we move into the new world and the new system. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. So if I look to my right, and this is the Aggresso system you know so well, Ross.
Thank you, Leader, and thanks Shannon for that. I appreciate the urgency, and I get why the direct award is preferred rather than a tender for that reason. Your comment about this potentially giving better value for money as well, I'm a little bit confused about that one. I would always have thought that a tender process, while taking longer and because of that may not be suitable here, is there not a risk here that we are missing out on value for money because of the urgency of the award?
Please come in, Shannon.
We have looked at it from that angle, and we have decided, based on various other factors, the cost of implementing a new system, based on local government reorganisation moving forward, and what other packages are being utilised in other areas, we believe this is, in the longer term, the greater value for money option.
Okay. All right. So members, again, we'll come back to this in part 2 for the actual commercials, but all those in favour of the recommendation, which is, sorry, Councillor Gaines, I beg your pardon, you seconded.
Just to reiterate what Shannon said about implementing computer systems, I think there's several people in this room that actually have been involved in the IT system, maybe in one of them, and actually implementing a financial system is a nightmare and can take an awful long time. So I think this looks like the best option. Thank you, Chair.
Grateful for that. Members, are we comfortable to vote in favour of the recommendation, which is, am I? I'm voting part 2. This is noted and passed on. Okay. And the recommendations here on my sheet are the part 2 recommendations, Sadie, are they? To approve the director award and approve the 4-year contract. Yeah, thank you. So noted at this stage, members. Thank you. Item 4, the report was to follow. So I will propose this. Councillor Gaines to second. Thank you.
Happy to second it, Peter.
Firstly, I'm thankful to all of the members who sat within the DAG, if you like, the Devolution Advisory Group, which was a well thought out and well run meeting. And I think we will hear, I'd like to think we will hear later in this discussion, some cross-party support for a major activity, a major event, a major decision. I think I'm talking to the people at home for the next couple of minutes because you perhaps will have heard all of this, but the government is driving an agenda of change in local government from a strategic authority which may or may not have a mayor, and also at the same time, or perhaps in parallel or slightly earlier, slightly later, a rationalisation of unitary authorities, a reduction or elimination of the 2-tier system of district and unitaries or district and counties. So this consolidation, if you like, is very much on their agenda. A tranche of councils have already been put forward their proposals for a strategic authority, including Suffolk, Kent, Hampshire. In the first wave, there are about 6 or 7, I believe. We weren't in that first wave, and we wouldn't be necessarily in the second wave. The government has invited a number of councils to come forward as a second wave of submissions of reorganised areas, both for the mayoral area, the strategic authority, and for the unitary bit enlarged. They've not invited Berkshire at this stage, but coincidentally, they have invited Oxfordshire. And we were approached by the Vale of Whitehorse District Council and the South Oxfordshire District Council to discuss joining them in a larger unitary authority. For people at home who get confused and perhaps disinterested in how local government works, a district council does not deliver the services we deliver in terms of adult social care, children and young people, and other services. They deliver the planning, they are a planning authority, there'll be a waste authority. So this paper is to ask the executive to support the submission being put in, because it's been invited from the Vale of Whitehorse and South Oxfordshire District Councils to MHCLG, Ministry of Housing, Local Government and Communities. And we are deciding this evening if we will support it. The officers work very hard and well. There's been some good cooperative working with officers from those 2 district councils to the submission you see before you this evening, which has been applauded, I believe, by certain chief execs across Berkshire, I believe. Applauded in its content and style, but I think they are perhaps disappointed if we were to head off as the new unitary with the Vale and South Oxford. What I've also heard, and it's not a secret, is that the government is now starting to say, you smaller unitaries, wait in a holding pattern. We've got a lot to do. And it does occur to me that if this submission does not find favour, we could be in a holding pattern with Berkshire's unitary authorities for some time, for several years. It's all about capacity at central government. So we're taking the opportunity because we think it's actually a rather good solution. The people of the Vale and South Oxford 50 years ago, admittedly, were part of Berkshire. And the 1974 reorganisation took them into Oxfordshire. And surprisingly, there are people in their 70s who are saying, I rather like being part of Berkshire, can we come back? That's not a reason in itself to do it, but it does say you're actually talking to willing partners, and that's always a good place to start. So we don't know if this submission will find favour. We do know that there may be 2 other submissions from Oxfordshire. One, the county, for a single unitary, which would be somewhat bigger than the government has given as an indication of guidelines. 500,000 people they're suggesting for a new unitary authority. That would be up towards the 800,000 mark. And we do know, although I don't think it's actually mapped out, that Oxford City will put in a unitary bid, but with some changes to boundaries of the Vale and South Oxfordshire. Now, to be fair, the government has said, we'd rather not have boundary changes in this. Let's keep it neat and let's keep it relatively easy on current boundaries. So no predictions, but what you do have here, if this finds favour, is 3 willing partners in areas that have rurality, the rural areas that are similar. There is no dominant town, so you don't necessarily end up with a, let's be frank, a Reading or an Oxford, perhaps, dominating an area. I'm sure Reading would say they wouldn't dominate any new authority. And you do have the synergy, if you like, of the synergies between the science parks in Oxfordshire. You've got Culham, you've got Harwell, we've got our Aldermaston, and that, to me, is an economic, joining up potentially of those sectors, those industries, if you like, and the brilliant people who work there. So we saw a lot of merit in this, and we pursued it through. If you are in agreement tonight, this bid will go in by Friday, the 21st of March. We will then undertake a public engagement exercise. We will take this to people in West Berkshire and say, are you behind this? So this isn't the end of the process, it's the start. And if we find that during that period there is a lot of support for it on its merits, then by November we'll be putting in a much more substantive bid. And that's where we are. And I do hope you'll support it, because I can see real benefit for it. Executive members, it'd be nice to hear from you in terms of your general views, please. Councillor Gawley?
Yeah, I think, Leader, it's a really positive step in the right direction and a really good direction of travel for us. There are many synergies, absolutely. I think not least the M4A34 corridor that links all of those. The main lines that we have running through Didcot, through our district as well, onto Reading and onto London. So I think there are such good strategic transport networks to make the most of, as well as continuing to keep that rural nature. And I think it is a generational opportunity in my eyes, and it's something that I certainly find very exciting. As someone hoping to live around the area for a lot longer to come, I do think it is a great once-in-a-generation opportunity to look at how we organise ourselves and continue to really get off the bench on this one and not get left behind, and be one of the first out of the blocks for sure.
Yes, that's an important point, isn't it? If this did find favour, then this council's future would be established for probably the next 40 or 50 years. And you can plan well on that. You do get economies of scale in large organisations. You've got to be careful you don't get more waste. And we don't have a lot of waste here before anybody picks me up on that. But, you've got this strength in numbers in a way. So other executive members, Heather Codling, please.
It's not just people in their 70s who remember the bit of Berkshire disappearing. I echo what Councillor Gawley has said about it being a good opportunity and actually getting in early and making a mark with willing partners. And I think that was the bit, to echo that bit, Leader. We're willing to work together with those councils and bring together, partners who have a lot of similarities, our geography and everything, and the size of the towns, you know, as much as Reading would say they wouldn't dominate, they're the big partner if we were going with Wokingham and Reading. And would we feel like the poor relation? And I don't think we want that for us. Thank you.
Some foot?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yeah, I think I would just echo really what my colleagues have already said. I think the fit of rural or rurality, if you like, and built up areas, high-tech industries that are around the area, they all merge very almost seamlessly together. And I think that can't be overstated. We're also, obviously, we know we're part of the national landscape, and I think, again, that fits in very well with areas like Vale of White Horse. You know, we can work collaboratively there. And finally, I would echo that I think it's really important to get our ducks in a row early so that we can achieve what we would like rather than it being dictated to us. So I would fully support it. Thank you.
Grateful for that. Thank you. Looking for, I think, Councillor Gaines to, yeah. Are you happy to speak now?
No, I'll wait till. Well, I was going to summate.
Let's take other comments. Yeah, Councillor Burke.
Thank you, Leader. I'm broadly in support of this proposal. I'll leave it to Councillor McKinnon to talk about the group position on this. But I have a question. I've heard. I agree with the comments that have been made by members of the executive, but none of them really mentioned anything other than it's a really nice idea. The question I have, perhaps to Councillor Codling, is why will this proposal be better for our children and young people than any other option that we might conceive?
Before I bring Councillor Codling in, one of the things, Councillor Burke, I saw was this similarity in the culture, the area, the geography, the lack of you've got towns of the size of Abingdon and Wallingford, which just seem to fit better with us as an area. So that's not about children specifically. And there would certainly be a lot of work to do to bring those schools into the new authority from Oxford County. But it seemed, from the work we've done so far, and more work to be done, it really did look beneficial to everybody in this district. But Councillor Codling might want to add something.
Yeah, I think specifically for children, I think we understand what it's like to have rural schools, small primaries. You know, for a very short time, I went to school in Reading, Upper Redlands, and that was a very different experience to anything I had in one of the rural schools. And I went to 9 different primaries across this district because my parents happened to be moving around quite a lot. So I also know what it's like to live in a rural area and in a town. And I think we would be able to look after those children in that rural area a lot better than perhaps somebody in Reading would understand how West Berks works.
So in a sec, I'm really excited about it, but there's a lot of work to do still. This is an interim plan. So the DAG, the Devolution Advisory Group, will continue to meet and wrestle with those. But at the moment, this looks good. Back to you.
Thank you. And I think it looks good. I hope I'm not giving the wrong impression here. And it's more than, you know this, Councillor Codling, it's more than schools, isn't it? The authority is going to be 3 times the size it is at the present. There's going to be, and 2/3 of those will be children whose special needs and social care needs are being met by Oxford County Council, and we've got to grab hold of that. So I won't dwell on this, but I want your assurance that this will be the best thing for our children, that in the transition, they will not suffer, or their outcomes will not be reduced, shall we say.
We're going to give you that assurance, good heavens. We're not planning for failure. We're not planning to go backwards, sir. I do. Are you going to sum up? Oh, no, I think in your summation. In the summation? Just take Councillor McKinnon, because then you might summate him as well.
Thank you very much, Leader. So, Councillor Bowick said that I'd iterate our group position. We don't actually have an official group position in as far as that we've not sat down at a group meeting and voted on what the position is. But you know that the three Conservative members who were on the Devolution Advisory Group were all supportive, myself included. And without speaking for all members of my group, I think the vast majority of them are supportive of this. I think there's pros and cons of the government's plans. That's not, those pros and cons aren't necessarily the pros and cons of this proposal. On the downside of creating larger unitaries, you do have a bit of a democratic deficit in place, in that eventually decision-making will end up being a bit more distant from the individual voter, eventually. But you mentioned the economies of scale, and I'm not going to reiterate all the positive points of explanation that you made, and I thought you did it very well. But economies of scale, with a slightly larger authority, there's a clear financial benefit to that as well. There's also a benefit of not being a super council, round about the 500,000 mark. At the moment, the government think that's the sweet spot. It's hard to disagree with that, really. I'll just mention that I think you have that cross-party support, certainly from us. And the way that you've gone about it, I'll just sort of reiterate my comments that I made at scrutiny. It is welcome, and it wasn't compulsory for you to do so. In fact, I think technically it's not even compulsory for the executive to give it the approval. I think you had the position as leader just to say yes, but you've not done that. You invited a good number of us onto the advisory group. It's not been a party political item at all, really. And I think that is to your credit. So I'll give you, I said at scrutiny that, we're going to cross swords, before and in the future, but important to give credit where it's due. So, and hopefully the fact that you do have broad support from across the chamber, that might just give this a little bit of heft. And I hope the government look positively on it. So, nothing else to add. And we're supportive.
I've got Councillor Vickers and then Councillor Wollaston.
Oh, thank you, Chairman, Leader, for getting me ahead of Councillor Wollaston. I think you know what I'm going to talk about. I'm here really, although I've got views on this in some detail. It's representing the North Wessex Downs partnership that I'm here as, and you appointed me to that until the end of this council, because we are going through a lot of changes ourselves. Only this morning we published our consultation draft of our new 5-year management plan, which has to be adopted by what are currently all 9 councils in exactly the same time frame that those councils that we're talking about today have to submit their final proposal, i.e. the end of October, and then off to DEFRA for them to approve it by the end of November. So this proposal would reduce the 9 till 7, which is slightly easier to handle. But of course, all round, Wiltshire, Hampshire as well are in the throes of doing this. Wiltshire, who host the team that we're in charge of on the Council of Partners, although it's in my ward, it's in our district, it's not looked after. It isn't a legal entity. So they rely on the local authorities to work on their behalf. They're a tiny number of staff. And it's probably true that we're not the only body that's affected by this, that has borders that goes beyond this district and beyond the boundaries of the 3 authorities. So this paper doesn't really mention those implications at all. So I just want some reassurance that the North Wessex Downs and other bodies like us that go beyond our border will be involved, particularly us, because we have this major 5-year management plan that we have to go through in the time frame. And I know this is going to be a lot of work for you. But if you could let me know as soon as possible how that liaison, how that involvement is going to take place. We've got a new chair chair doesn't have any knowledge about local authority. I'm sure she'll want to meet you soon, like the previous outgoing chair did. But she leaves me as the vice chair, which is ex officio, has to be a local authority member to deal with this sort of matter. And so it's going to be quite a lot of work for me on top of what I was already going to have to do, the 5-year management plan. So if I could have that assurance, and I went to school in the east of Berkshire. So I remember in the 1960s, and yeah, it was early 1960s, I was at school at Wellington, and Berkshire was the old Berkshire. So I'm looking forward to this as your preferred option, but it affects other people, Chairman. That's all I want to say.
Well, I think the assurance to you is that NWD would be a major consultant stakeholder, you know, and that's part of that engagement piece that will be going on through the summer. So you have that assurance from the chair.
I hope we'll get some response from the council. This is not the final chance that the councils will have to respond. It's very much an early draft because it's been difficult to prepare with so many moving features in the policy environment, but it's got to be responded to by the end of next month.
Who are you liaising with?
I'm liaising with Paul Hendry from the environment team and also with Paula Amarelli from the planning team. They're the two main liaisons, but it really affects the whole place directorate in particular.
We have you with us today, April, so this is something on your side of things with Paul.
Apologies. So we'll make sure that those conversations are happening with those two officers and that you are getting the support around that area.
Straightforward, Councillor Vickers?
Just putting a marker down really at this stage. Thank you.
You have. Councillor Williston.
Thank you, Leah. I'm also supportive of this. I don't like the idea of being associated with Reading necessarily. I think they will dominate us. And I think the name of Ridgeway is an inspired one. My only concern is I'm not sure we're going to see many cost savings. If I could pick some practical examples, we've presumably got 3 chief execs, going to have to be whittled down to 1. We've presumably got 3 chambers, going to have to be whittled down to 1. And it's going to be a much bigger one than we have at the moment in any of those authorities. And would be interested to know whether the proposal is to have what I assume is about 120 councillors, or whether they're going to have increased responsibility, because I am concerned about the lack of accountability to the individual electorate. I have about 4,000 people I represent, and I struggle with my caseload at times. If that would be 8,000, I would really be struggling.
I had 10,500 as a county councillor.
But you're very impressive, Leader.
Yes, you make a good point, and I'll come back to it later. But I think if you could perhaps now second and summate, and then I'll summate finally, see where we go with the vote. Thank you.
So I'll just pick up a few points in actual fact. So absolutely, the similarities between ourselves and the Vale and South Oxfordshire are quite startling, with things like Aberdeen and Newbury being very similar, Tame and Hungerford also being similar. Somebody mentioned the science and economies of those industries. That was Councillor Gawley. Again, we've got a very nice area there with lots of science things, AWE, Harwell, etc. The rural element is really important. So Councillor Foote actually mentioned the rural areas before Councillor Vickers did. Absolutely, that whole area is obviously AONB, or National Landscape as we now know it. So yeah, that's a really important element. It is only an interim report, Councillor Vickers. It's a submission. Obviously, the detail, when you saw the attachment to this report, it's quite a good report, quite a good attachment. There's lots of information in there. Lots of tables and comparisons, which make it seem very similar in the makeup of this area and those two areas. But there will be much more detail. There will be much more detail when we do the summation in November, if the government actually give us the go-ahead. Obviously, there's also going to be lots of public consultation with groups and individuals as well. Somebody mentioned democratic deficit. I think that was Councillor McKinnon, actually. I too worry a little bit about that because, as Councillor Willison said, suddenly we're going to be having less councillors representing more people. I do believe at that point we're going to have the parishes and town councils getting much more involved in representing their people. I think they're going to become much more important as the sort of the lowest level, if you like, without making lowest level sound really awful. The lowest level of democracy, they're going to be very much more important, I think, as a conduit between the unitary and our residents. So that's really important. With opportunity, coming back to Councillor Buick, I think not having a children's services in those two areas, we will get the opportunity to be the sort of the forerunner. We're going to be the leader in those two areas of children's services. They can learn all our expertise. They can learn from what we've done and what we've achieved. And actually, I think that would actually be a really positive thing rather than a negative thing. I think we do lots of things very well in children's services, and we can actually, although we're going to have more children involved, we actually have lots of things in place that I think we can share with those two authorities. Don't think I've got anything else, Leader.
Thank you very much. The name, it's a working title, and we will ask people what they think. I don't want a Boaty McBoatface sort of answer, though. I think it's got to be, is it North Wessex? Well, North Wessex is a much bigger area, but Ridgeway is a good working title at this stage. But it's not a slam dunk. The government need to consider the bids that go in and decide which ones they will support. But this one has, it seems, cross-party support. Thank you very much for your comments, Councillor McKinnon. It has the support of the three councils. That's a good start too, because not all of them are agreed positions. So I think there's a real opportunity. The size issue, 500,000 people, the towns and parishes would have an opportunity, I think, to step up, but the government have not put anything really in their legislation about that. So do the parishes start to think that they might merge, but that's entirely up to them to get super parishes. The towns get more confident in themselves, not only Hungerford, the town councils of Abingdon and Didcot. So there's a stepping up to be done to make sure that democratic deficit is not writ large. And then finally, as I say, the strength of our submission is based on enthusiasm. And I find a lot of enthusiasm for this, both with councillors, with officers, and with members of the public who, on social media, have been saying, this looks good, I like this, amongst those who everything is wrong. But, people have written to me and said, this is a good thing, I like this. So it's early days, but it's not bad for early days, and I commend it to you. And I'm asking you to approve the submission of an interim plan by South Oxfordshire and Whitehorse councils, indicating an intention to develop proposals for the creation of a new unitary council in the terms outlined in the appendix. Do I have your agreement? Will you please vote? Thank you. Indeed, members. That was a good debate, and thank you for your support, and I hope it's ongoing in every aspect. Well, perhaps not. Okay, thank you. I think that's probably the end of part one, is it, Sadie? Yeah. So thank you. Good to see you, visitors. And you don't have to go, Councillor, because you're allowed to stay for a part two, but it's up to you. Very good. Tony, we'll see you next week. Mr. Hoddinott, is it? Yeah. Good to see you, sir. I look forward to it.